of the lecture will be handling data for cyber physical systems. The speaker is Dr. Ritu Snegdh, Assistant Professor, Department of Computer Science and Engineering from BIT Mesra. Now I'll be introducing her to you. Dr. Ritu Snegdh received her PhD from BIT Mesra in the area of wireless sensor networks from the Department of Electronics and Communication Engineering. She received her master's degree in software engineering from BIT Mesra in 2002 and her bachelor's degree in electrical engineering from BIT Sindri in 96. She joined the Department of Computer Science and Engineering at BIT Mesra in 2003, and she is currently working as assistant professor in the Department of Computer Science and Engineering. She has authored and co-authored a number of journal articles, book chapters, and conference papers. Her area of interest include cyber physical systems, IoT, software engineering, database management systems, and wireless sensor networks. Now I'll be introducing, welcome madam to the FDP. Now I'll be introducing you to the participants. There are 200 participants who have registered for this FDP, out of which 25 participants are from Andhra Pradesh, 7 are from Bihar, 4 from Delhi, 7 from Gujarat, 1 from Arunachal Pradesh, 1 from Assam, 1 from Himachal Pradesh, 1 from Jammu and Kashmir, 8 from Jharkhand, 10 from Karnataka, 1 from Kerala, 8 from Madhya Pradesh, 24 from Maharashtra, 2 from Odisha, 1 from Puducherry, 5 from Punjab, 5 from Rajasthan, 46 from Tamil Nadu, 10 from Telangana, 1 from Tripura, 13 from Uttar Pradesh, from Uttarakhand we have 2 participants and 7 participants from West Bengal. And all the participants are from various fields of engineering. Welcome you, madam, in this workshop, in this FDP. Now over to you. Thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Professor Lakshmi. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I hope whatever I deliver is of use to you. And already doing our podcast. I'll just be sharing my screen. I hope I'm audible to all of you.
Yes, you are audible.
Yes, ma'am, audible.
Audible.
Yeah, I'll just be sharing the screen.
Okay.
So I hope the
Screen is also visible.
okay, thank you. So let's get started with this very different topic. We've been known to cyber physical systems. There have been many allied topics that have that must have come to your view, like robotics, like Internet of Things, like embedded systems. And cyber physical system is in some way closely related to them. Now, the other thing that you must be aware of is we have so many data handling tools that are available. We've got machine learning algorithms that allow us handle data. And data is something that is the most critical existence currently. So we need to focus on what are the requirements of handling data so that it is suited for cyber physical system. Because from the start of the session, I would like to tell you that the data that we know of, the database systems, whether we talk about of a structured or an unstructured type of a system, data when it comes down to a cyber physical system, it becomes really, really different. So the topic of discussion for today is going to be, I'll be introducing you to the basics of cyber physical systems, where we'll be going very fast into the architecture, the components and the workflow of what we expect out of a cyber physical system. Then we'll be going down to what are the requirements of data and CPS, the techniques for fusion. I won't be going to the machine learning part of it because there are abundant number of models that are already there. And fusion is one such technique which is really important for cyber physical systems. Okay, and then I'll be taking up a case study, and that is my research, the current research that I'm doing on cyber physical systems and specifically IoT. Okay, so let's get started with the basic definition of a cyber physical system. Now, when we start off with a cyber-physical system. As from the name itself, we've got two components, right? We've got a cyber space, we can call it a cyber system, we can call it a cyber space, and we've got a physical space. So the physical space is something that is ruled by the laws of physics. So every physical phenomena needs to be encountered in this physical space. On the contrary, cyberspace is something that talks about of algorithms. It talks about of processes. It talks about of measuring systems. It talks about of analytics of data. So when we couple them together and we combine it to create a system, we get a cyber physical system. But the point to be noted here is when we combine these two systems, we do not focus on the union of these two systems. Okay, we focus on the intersection of these two systems. So what are the commonalities between the laws of physics and how we can tune it to the computer system? Okay, so we are aware of smart systems, and we know that every smart system is going to have a physical component and it's going to have a computational component. So the computational component is responsible for computing and recomputing using a feedback loop. So the third most important thing besides a cyber and a physical system is the feedback. Okay, now when I say that I have a feedback system, I've got a physical component, I have a computational component, you may see that it is very, very similar to other allied topics, right? Like IoT, like even robotics, WSN, embedded systems, right? So then where is the difference? So we'll go down to the commonalities. So if we see the similarity with these systems, they are similar because they have a combination of communication. They need to communicate, and specifically they communicate through the internet. They also need to compute because they need to tune in to the ever-changing environment, and they also need to control. So basically, whether we are talking of robotics or we are talking of IoT or a wireless sensor network, I need a actuator and I need a sensor, and I need the actuator to be talking to the sensor with the help of a network. So that is the basis of any cyber physical system. So what are the features that make a cyber physical system different from these are two things. That essentially a WSN or an IoT may not essentially have a feedback control loop. Okay, a machine to machine intelligence may not be tuned in for a controlling parameter. Okay, I'll give you an example. For example, for an IoT, if the particular light intensity has to be measured before turning on the bulb, then there is only one parameter that needs to be measured, and that is the light intensity. If it goes below a threshold, the relay turns it on. If it is above a threshold, the relay is going to turn it on. So it is pretty simple. Now the environment is not changing, right? So even when we talk about these allied technologies, cyber physical system is different because we are talking of dynamicism in the system. It has to be dynamic. So for controlling the dynamics, for being able to measure how the environment or how the physics has changed, we need a continuous feedback control loop, which is it is not aptly measured for a WSN or an IoT. The second most important thing is that whenever we talk about we try to model a physical environment, we try to model it through mathematics. We create a mathematical model out of it, and for creating that mathematical model, we split the entire system into small subparts, and then we create a mathematical model of it, and then we try to scale it up. So if we talk about of a complex cyber physical system, the controlling part is going to be governed by n different subsystems, and these subsystems needs to be talking to each other. These systems need to be communicating with each other. So we actually what we get is a network of control systems in case we want to model a complex task. Now, if we compare it to robotics, if we take the example of a robot who is going to do a target tracking, it is going to have n types of sensors, and not one sensor is sufficient enough of giving you a decision of where the target is. So it can have a camera sensor, it can have infrared sensors, it can have location sensors. Okay, so the combination of these sensors are going to be analyzed before you're able to track the system, right? And if the target is not moving, it becomes a static system and it does not eventually require a feedback control loop. Okay, so let's move down to the realization of a cyber physical system. If I need to realize it in a very simplistic manner, I have a two-tier architecture to explain this, and we've got the cyberspace and we've got the physical space. The physical space is responsible for measuring the physics or the physiological phenomena or the environment. What it delivers through the network is the data. The data once reaches the cyberspace and we have the tools and analysis to be performed on them. So basically the cyberspace is a combination of algorithms, combination of tools that are going to extract information out of the data, and it has to be intelligent enough for deciding something or for performing an action. So basically we need to derive wisdom out of the data that is coming out. So once the cyberspace is sufficiently going to solve what the data is all about, the correctness of the data, the applicability of the data, the validity of the data, it's going to suggest some actions. Now these actions again move down to the physical space where the physical entities, which are sensors, which are actuators, are going to carry on the actions based on their decisions, right? Now, whenever there is an action on that physical space, it is going to change the state of that physical space. It is going to change the state of that system. And the change in the state of the system again needs to be sent back to tell the cyberspace how it needs to tune in for efficiency. If whatever action had been performed, it was precise enough, this physical space needs to relay back that it was precise or whether it was imprecise. If it is imprecise, the cyberspace is going to recompute with more amount of data and then refurbish whatever the actions were done. Now, where if this is the scenario, now this scenario is similar to an IoT. It is similar to robotics. It is similar to a machine-to-machine communication. Now then, what is the place of difference? There are two things that are very critical in CPS. The first one is the timing, and the second one is the concurrency. Now, a cyber physical system, we're talking of it as a system, so it has multiple components. Every component is going to be comprising of the same physical space, right? And it is going to be sending its data to the cyberspace. So many devices are going to be operating concurrently. And in addition to that, it is going to be synchronous as well as asynchronous. The next thing is timing. Now, it is really very important that it facilitates the timing requirements. Now, there is something that is known as the validity of data is according to the time. If I create a mathematical model, now there can be an argument that even computer science considers time as a parameter, but practically for computer science engineers, we usually treat time more of it as a performance criteria rather than a corrective measure. When we talk about of timing in case of a cyber physical system, we are talking of it in context to its expiry date, whether the data or whether the decision that had been made at that particular time is valid for that particular interval of time. So whenever we are talking of a cyber physical system, we are talking of the time critical operations, whether it is the Boeing aircraft, whether it is a healthcare management system, whether it is Industry 4.0, we are always focusing on something that we call as a zero downtime situation. So whenever we want our system to be maintenance free, we need to be rechecking it again and again. So we need to validate that the physical space is valid enough. It is giving us the data in the prescribed timeliness, okay? And the cyberspace is also computing within the real-time constraints. So whenever we come down to cyber physical systems, real-time constraints become the most important thing. Now, further, if we have to look further into the spaces that we have, if we disintegrate our physical space and the cyberspace so that we are able to look inside it, we've got this three-tier architecture in cyber physical systems. Okay, so we've got this environmental tier that talks about of all the physical devices. They can be sensors, they can be actuators, they can be the relay devices, they can be the network devices. These all form the environment tier because the amount of data that is going to be collected, the volume of data that is going to be generated is dependent on how good your network is, how good your device is. When we publish the data, when we collect the data and we transfer it to the cyberspace, the cyberspace now has two things. One is the control layer. The control system is just like controlling the environment as well as the services. Now, when we come down to a cyber physical system and we want some data analytics tools to be there, the service tier is nothing but a computing environment. So this computing environment is going to be controlled by the control system. The control system is going to choose which service is better for a particular application. For example, if we talk about a vehicular system, an automated vehicles that we have, which is the classic example of a cyber physical system, you have to have a controlling scenario for the service framework. So if it is a luxury vehicle and it's an automated driving vehicle, it needs to be controlling the movement of the vehicles as well as the window panes, the music. So there are different protocols, there are different service buses that will be working with the working of the engine, with the working of the power windows. So they are going to listen to different protocols. They're going to listen to different services. So who is the one that is going to choose the service dependent on what is the data or what is the target environment is the control system. So your environmental tier is going to take care of the target environment. The target environment is where the action is going to be performed, where the sensors are deployed. So the target environment is going to collect the data and the physical device is just going to transport that data to the cyberspace, okay? And the physical device is going to execute or actuate the decisions that were taken at the service framework or at the control system. So this is the actual three-tier architecture that is followed in CPS. When we move down from the architectural components, now we have three elements of a cyber physical system. We've got the cyberspace, we've got the physical space, and we've got the system as a whole. So if we try to regard this in context to what is the internet that will be required or what is the data that it is going to be dealing with, we've got so many combinations of internet of X. It's not only internet of things, it is an internet of X elements. So when we talk about of cyberspace, the elements that are a part of the cyberspace are any data center. We all know that cloud is the essential part of current cyber physical systems because of its infinite computational capacity. We've got data centers, we've got information systems, all softwares, all data, and all the cloud infrastructure is a part of the cyberspace. What is the data that they deal in? They deal with every data that is related to or is going to be delivered by internet. So dependent on the volume, the variety, the veracity, the velocity, there are 7 V's to to classify a data as big data. So a cyberspace is going to be talking about a data that is about an IoT. It's about big data. So what are the Internet of X that is going to be involved in a cyberspace? It's going to be a combination of computing machines. It's not going to be one machine. It's not going to be one virtual machine or a one physical machine. It is going to be an inter-network of computing machines. And that's why a cyberspace is going to implement an Internet of Computing. Now, like we saw earlier, the cyberspace is also going to be comprising of n different services suited to the data and the target environment's requirements. Okay, so we're going to have an internet of services. Now coming down to the physical space. When we talk about of the physical space, what does it comprise of? What are the elements? It talks of everything from sensors, actuators, collectors. So every physical entity basically is going to be the physical space. And what is going to be collected as data? I've just given you this is not an exhaustive list. This is just an example that we can collect data like temperature, electricity, location, the type of environment, and it also can give us the state of the device, whether it is active, whether it is dormant, whether it is asleep, or whether it is out of order. Now, when we have to realize the physical space, we are talking of actual physical things. So the first internetwork is of things. And so we have this Internet of Things. Then, because we are collecting data, and this is the era of content-based networking. So because we want data to be really fast and we don't want additional data to be flowing through the network, we classify it according to the content. So the next internetwork of devices are or will be for devices that transmit similar content. So we have an internetwork of similar type of computing or physical entities. So this we term it as the Internet of Content. Then we come down to the next internet, and that is the Internet of Thinking. Now, for a cyber physical system, because we have many devices and not all devices will be pushing up data to the cloud. If that is the case, then the volume of traffic that is going to be generated is going to be abundant. So we need to have some place or some in-network computing, right? So the physical device needs to be thinking when to transmit data, what to transmit, right? So this becomes the internetwork of thinking machines, right? So the machines are not just going to blindly collect data and transport the data to the cloud or to the cyberspace. It's going to think whether it is to be transmitted or whether it needs to be stored in the buffer as historical data. Then we come down to the Internet of Machine Intelligence. So machine intelligence comes where the physical device that is collecting the data is sufficient enough to actuate according to the data. So it does the internal processing and it does the actuation without moving down to the cyberspace. So it's got this internetwork of intelligent machines, and that's why the name Internet of Machine Intelligence. When we combine all of these together, we get a cyber physical system. And what are the elements? The elements of a CPS are the physical sensor network. So it has a network of physical sensors. They collect physical data. And what is the internet that they are talking about? They are talking about the Internet of Things. And because we say that we have to have a machine intelligence, it talks about the actuation through machine to machine intelligence. The M to M communication is the Internet of X for a cyber physical system. Coming down to the CPS workflow. If we talk about of a cyber physical system, how does it work? So we've discussed the architecture as in a 2-tier and a 3-tier architecture. We've discussed what data it is going to collect. So we need to know how the data is going to flow. So the first thing that a cyber physical system is going to do is monitoring. Now this monitoring is a very important thing. Why? Because it does not only monitor the environment, it monitors the health of its own devices. So if we take monitoring, if we take CPS to be having to be for two types of systems, let's say for a healthcare system, and if it is an emergency situation, so the monitoring equipment of a cyber physical system should give a real-time response within the time frame for any emergency situation that arises. When it comes down to Industry 4.0, and the cyber physical system is going to be applied to machineries or to one machine or a fleet of machines, and they are going to be synchronously communicating or working together, the monitoring will be for aiming at a maintenance free operation or an error free operation. So it monitors the processes, and the process includes the data collection till the actuation. The analysis is something that is done by the algorithms and is not a part of the physical system. So the monitoring of the process and the environment is then sent out through networking, and because we cannot transmit everything directly as a raw data, we do a little bit of aggregation and diffusion. Computation is the next step that follows, and in the computing workflow, we reason out and we analyze the collected data. So this reasoning and this analysis of the collected data may be predictive, it may be diagnostic, it may be prescriptive, or it just may be descriptive. It is just describing the process. Finally, the CPS workflow ends with actuation. So basically this diagram, I'm just trying to explain you how the data is going to flow from the physical devices to the cyberspace, and how the information about the actuation is going to flow from the cyberspace to the physical space. What are the aim? For designing of this workflow, we have certain aim to achieve. The first thing, if I use this workflow, what am I aiming to achieve? The first thing is that for every action, I will be able to collect a feedback. And that feedback will ensure that whatever I have been doing is correct. And whatever I have been doing is correct means that the sensors that I have used in my cyber physical system are accurate. Their calibration is correct. They are the right type of sensors. They are in working condition. So the correctness of the operations needs to be ensured for future also. Okay. Then the third aim is, because I am collecting data, if I do not have this computing workflow, if I don't have this component of computing, my data will not be ready for analysis within the real-time constraint. It needs to be remembered that whenever we are talking of cyber physical system, the timeliness, the minimum delay is the basic requirement for computing operations. And finally, we have this aim of checking whether the physical process is going to satisfy the predefined criteria. That is, if the temperature had to be detected, if the light switch had to be turned on, it is turning on. Now, this is the summary of whatever a cyber physical system needs to incorporate. So there are 5 C architecture. For a typical example, I've taken off an Industry 4.0, and these 5 elements need to be there, or it needs to be satisfied for any cyber physical system. So the first thing is, we need to have a stable connection. It needs to be stable. The environment needs to be validated. So for a stable connection, we have to have a seamless and a tether-free data. We don't need the hassles of a wired or a wireless network. It should be free, it should be tether free, and it should be in a seamless manner, uninterrupted manner. Then we need to have a selection of sensors with specification. So now we, at this level, when we start designing a CPS, we should be aware of a sensor. Let's take a simple example of a agricultural monitoring scenario, where we have to monitor the moisture of the field before turning the water pump on. So there are different types of sensors that may be available. There may be a manual sensor, there may be an analog sensor, there may be a digital sensor. So if I have installed a manual sensor, that reading is going to be very accurate. In case I have a digital sensor which is not available, in case I have got an analog sensor, the accuracy is not very good, but it is the only sensor that can be coupled to my computer system. I cannot couple the reading of a manual sensor to my computer system. So I need to select sensors with their specifications so that I'm able to design the cyber physical system in a efficient manner. Now, once this connection is of sensors, it is of the devices that are going to carry data to the cloud or to the cyberspace. Then we come down to the next most important thing is conversion. We need to convert the raw data. Now, there are many elements. We'll not be going into the detail of how we convert it, because I believe that most of us are aware of the machine learning, the data cleaning, the pre-processing, extrapolation, interpolation facilities, the statistical analysis that are already available and we have been frequently using. So when we come down to conversion, what we need to do is that machine data needs to be mapped into information. So basically conversion is converting that raw data into information. For that, we're going to use analytics tools. Okay. Now, what is that conversion going to be useful for? It is going to be useful for prognostics as well as the monitoring of the machine components itself. It needs to, so we need to measure the health of the device that is measuring, and we need to know what the device is measuring, because we have to validate the data that is being collected. Okay. Then obviously, because we've talked about of a cyber physical system, and we said that for decision making, it's not only one sensor that is important. Like I gave the example of a robot and target tracking. So let's say the robot has 5 or 7 sensors and all of them are generating data per second. So it's going to be a large volume of data. So obviously within conversion, we need to have the extraction, or we need to reduce the dimensionality of the data. So we need to compute the correlation among the data and keep only those fields that are critically important to that of creating information out of the data. So now this is a very debatable issue, like the correlation thing, because I say CPS is different from IoT, it is different from robotics, different from M2M, just because it is having a dynamic environment. So the data elements, the correlation, any algorithm of correlation that you're going to run, any PCA or any CCA that you're going to run, you have to implement that correlation on the basis of the pre-stored data. And it is on the basis of the data that you are able to correlate them. Now, if the data itself changes, if the behavior of the environment changes, the entire data set is going to be changing. So what was correlated with whichever element was positively correlated, I won't say it goes to negative correlation, but yes, whatever was highly correlated may not be that highly correlated in the next time slice. And that is why when we architect for cyber physical system, the timeliness, the validity of the data, the validity of the system needs to be recorrected with the help of a feedback. So at this conversion, once the data gets converted to information, what is the status of the machine? The machine is now self-aware, right? So it knows what it has to collect. It knows that out of these 12 sensor elements, it is only these first 5 that are important to me. And whenever the sensor is blindly going to transmit that 11 column data, it's going to extract that 5 column out of it. And now the machine is self-aware as to what it requires. After conversion, we move down to the cyber component. And in the cyber component, we've got an abundant space. We've got infinite resources. So basically, cyber is nothing but it is something that is related to the cloud. Okay. So when we come down to the cyber thing, it can be similar to cloud. So we've got a server component that is going to collect data from the machine, post it to the cloud, and now I can execute all the clustering, data mining, heavy computational intensive tools and algorithms for delivering or extracting intelligence out of that information. So I need to derive intelligence out of the information that I have collected. I need to build up my brain so that I am able to decide based on whatever I have learned what is the course of action for a particular situation. So now what is the state of the machine of the cyber physical system? The machine now is able to compare because it has transformed that data into wisdom. It knows that under situation 1, this is the set of action. Under situation 2, this is the course of action. So now it can achieve this self-comparison facility. It's able to compare among whatever it has derived. Now, if we are able to compare, if we are able to see multi-dimensions of the data, and if we are able to compare among those data sets, we become intelligent. So after this cyber phase, we come down to this cognition phase. This cognition phase is responsible for decision making, diagnostics, and presentation of that information into knowledge. After the cognition, after the wisdom has been developed, we move down to the configuration or the actual control that the machines do by themselves. So they configure and reconfigure themselves according to the situation. So this is the gist, or these are the features of a cyber physical system. And now let's move down to data handling. So what happens in that data handling? So these slides just tell you what data, how data has to be dealt with. So we've already discussed in depth about the data collection. I'll just be briefing you about the types of data processing and pre-processing that is being done. So the collection is just collection of the sensory data and storing it at the cloud. Now, whether we store it at the cloud or whether we store it at the edge layer is dependent on how time critical that operation is. Now, when we talk about of data and handling of data for cyber physical system, a normal database management system, a normal batch cloud-based batch processing system is not enough. If we talk about of real-time streaming data management algorithms, even that is not sufficient. For a cyber physical system, I need a combination of both. I need to do a batch processing system so that I build up my wisdom, and I need to do a real-time streaming data operations so that I'm able to deliver the decision on time. So what can be done with the data so enormous? The first thing is we need to collect it in the right format. We whatever I'm representing you in these slides, I won't say that these are chronologically ordered. These are just the things that we can do with the data. We can collect them, we can integrate them and we can reduce the data. That's what we talked about, using principal component analysis or using correlation and extracting only those attributes which are important, and we can transform them according to our requirements. Okay, In case the data is missing, we can do data cleaning by removing the noise, removing inconsistencies, and filling up for missing data. So we can basically extrapolate or interpolate data that has been missing. And finally, we can go with data analysis. So in a typical scenario, in a typical intelligent or a smart scenario, we can do these operations with the data. When we go for, I mentioned the analysis about 4 parts. So that is what we talk about in data analysis here. So if we move down to data analysis here, so data analysis, we have 4 basic analysis that we can do. Descriptive as to what has happened, diagnostic as to why, if it has happened, then what is the cause, predictive is if it had happened earlier, what will happen if certain actions are performed, so that will be predictive. And prescriptive is once a particular action has been done, right, and it has created a change of state in that system, then what is the action to take when such a situation arises. So in case of any error, you first need to find out whether the error had happened, what was the cause of the error, right? Will that error due to this cause some other problems in the system, and then what are the actions that you need to take. So coming down to the same representation for a typical data life cycle, we start from the input sources. These are the input sources that we have, and this is the final decision or the actuation that we have. And we have the streaming data, we've got the repository. So this is what I was talking about. This is going to take care of the batch processing system. This is going to take care of the streaming data, and we have to produce the intelligent information on which the decision and the actuation again has to go down to the input sources. So this is the typical data life cycle that is followed by any cyber physical system. Now, we've got 5 C's of a cyber physical system, and we've got a 4-layered model of data. So this is just a map of how they are going to talk to each other. So these 5 C's of the CPS are connection, conversion, cyber, cognition, and configuration. This configuration is the place where the machine knows what to do by itself, does not require a human intervention. So obviously, when it is behaving like a human, it is wise enough to do so. So obviously, this layer of a cyber physical system is going to map down to something that we know as wisdom. So if we move from this DKIY, this is the basic data analytics model that we use. So the domain, knowledge, information, and the wisdom layered approach to data analytics. These knowledge to wisdom, information to knowledge, and data to information are the sub levels that we need to cross. Okay, so if we come down to this details of these at the data level, how are we going to map it to the 5 C's? At the data level, you're going to gather data from different spaces, and then you're going to convert it into information. How? By finding the hidden patterns, by finding the habits of the users, and by correlating or finding out the relationships among the data. When you do these extractions, you move down to the information layer, and at that information level, you are able to, you know the user behavior, and you're able to communicate it to the layer up. When we move down from the information to the knowledge level, we cannot directly do that. We need to extract only those elements that are really important, and then you have to store it somewhere. So when you have to store it somewhere, then you need to have a knowledge repository of that information. Okay, now we move down to the knowledge level where the cognition is to be shaped, where the user knowledge. This is just an example, like when we are going to read a blog, or we are going to order for a particular item or we are going to search for a software, we usually try to see the user experiences that have been shared on the internet. So this is just one simple example. So based on what are the reports on the performance of the system, you decide whether you need to go with that particular information to knowledge that had been extracted, or you need to redo that extraction of useful information. And finally, we reach down to the wisdom level. At the wisdom level, you are able to decide for, at the wisdom level, you are able to decide for our the intelligent is at the topmost level where you're able to decide for your own as to what is the course of action that has to be done. So the data is going to be now available in the form of information, a collective information that has been categorized or classified as per requirement becomes your knowledge. When you are able to apply that knowledge dependent on the situation of the environment, you say you come down to that level of wisdom. So if the context is going to change, your cognition is going to be working so that you are able to map that knowledge to suit to the requirement of the context. Okay, so I think before moving further, I would request in case you anyone has any doubt, so that I can move down to mapping data with the cyber physical system. Anyone with any uh, issues related to whatever has been discussed? Now, should I move further?
Participants?
Okay.
Okay, please continue.
Yeah. Okay. So coming down to now mapping it to a cyber physical system, we need to understand what are the constraints first. So as I said, you require a real time criteria. So you require a really fast processing at every individual subsystem. If it is going to talk about the safety application, it has to be within time if you're talking in context to an emergency situation like that in healthcare. And if you're talking of a cyber physical system in case of industry 4.0, it should be maintenance free. So basically the systems should be having a zero downtime. The next problem that we have for mapping data, when I say that the transition from a data to wisdom is really simple, where you are going to extract, where you're going to map, you're going to collect. When we say it verbally, it becomes really simple. But when we actually implement it on the physical system, the mapping of the data is very tough because of certain infrastructural constraints. So the next constraint that we face in a cyber physical system is that of an infrastructure, and this infrastructure becomes a problem because we have an open system. When we talk about of a physical system, it is heterogeneous. There may be different types of sensors. These sensors may be of different delivering data in different format. So the collected data is of a different format. The way that they are communicating, that may be different. Some may be talking over Bluetooth. Some may be talking using a Zigbee network. Some may be talking with a 4G or a 5G network. Some may be using Wi-Fi for communicating. So every packet of data is going to be heterogeneous in nature. The third thing that is faced by an infrastructure is that there is not one general solution for mapping that data. So you've got a large variety of data, and it is heterogeneous. You don't have one platform, right? And what we guessed, so if I say that my calibration of a sensor is of an X amount, we are assuming ideal situations of the environment. If the environment is going to change, then the sensors need to be recalibrated because the data that they are supplying is no longer valid. Similarly, the requirements may also change. With the change in the requirements, maybe I no longer require the temperature data. So the infrastructure which was once developed for delivering a data to a particular cyber physical system changes, then the infrastructure needs to be reconfigured. When we talk about data quality, we've discussed data quality in depth now, is that we require cleaning and processing of data. And why is it a constraint? Because we have got so many algorithms that can so efficiently process data. We've got machine learning algorithms that achieve 99% of classification and prediction capability. Then why at all is data quality going to be a problem? It is because the context in a physical system, in a cyber physical system, is going to change. And the second thing, if I want to execute a machine learning algorithm over a large data set, it is going to be time consuming. So by the time I get the result of that algorithm, the result may no longer be valid. So the quality of data or the mode in which the data is going to get collected is really critical. And finally, security, because cyber physical system allows you to have heterogeneous networks, heterogeneous systems, different types of devices, and anytime, anywhere, anything type of a connectivity, then security is always a concern. So security, just like an Internet of Things, like robotics, like any online operation, is very crucial and critical. Security ensuring for a cyber physical system is a constraint. So now security is another domain, and we won't be going into that. Uh, let's come down to how at all can we solve these CPS constraints. So how at all we are going to solve these constraints. So the first way in which we can do is with the standardization. Now standardization of anything is really simple. You have one portal where you have got one format, so it becomes secure. It is it's going to reduce the workhead, right? But then you won't be able to scale it. It won't be versatile. You say that your cyber physical system is of ubiquitous in nature. It can be handling data from any location. You can handle data from any device. You can observe it. So that versatility of that application is lost in case you go with standardization. The next solution is by using cloud computing. So with cloud computing, you have a large repository, and you have got a high-end processors that can execute it within time. But the biggest disadvantage is that the location of the data is unknown. And because you don't know where the data is actually located, it is insecure. And you have this problem of it getting copied or getting tampered with. The third solution that is existing for solving this data constraint for CPS is online and data stream learning that we all apply using data analytics, data mining, machine learning algorithms. So with online and data stream learning, we've got a low cost and a maintenance free operation. But whenever we talk about of a batch processing or a machine learning sort of a system, we usually, or even if we follow statistical approaches, we have a large volume of data, means thousands of terabytes of data. The if I give you 100 raw data to be analyzed and to publish the result, what will the simplest way, or to predict a trend, the simplest way would be to average the data. So whenever you're going to average the data, the accuracy is going to be lost. It won't be granular in nature. So online and data stream learning are pretty good, but the accuracy is really, really low. Now we come down to the fourth very important thing, that is methodology for processing data, and this is known as the digital twin scenario, right? So this facility is known as the time machine methodology. Okay, so in the time machine methodology, what do we have? We have the same physical device at two instances. It's got the historical version of it, and it's got the current version of the same device. So basically, in case of a time machine methodology, you're going to have a device, what it was historically and what it is currently. So the historical thing, the historical instance of the device stays at the cyber, so it's known as the cyber twin, and the current state of the device stays at the physical level, and it is known as the physical twin. So whenever a physical twin is out of order, let's say your sensor stops working, on the basis of the cyber twin, you are able to keep on processing. Now this is very, very interesting, is because most of the industry 4.0 use this type of a cyber twinning operation. Now I'll just give you an example for this. Is in this roller in the steel manufacturing plants, where you cut the steel strips and you roll it into transportable forms, you have a machine, an automated machine, that at a particular instant of time is going to cut that sheet into precisely same length. Now I can have a sensor deployed at, if I'm using a cyber physical system, I can have a sensor deployed at that cutting edge, and it may detect when it is going to, when the cut is going to be executed. Once that steel strip is cut, now it is put to analysis. What is the analysis that we do? We compute how fine that cutting was. We can use image processing tools to see how efficiently it was cut, and the feedback, the precision may be transmitted back to that sensor. So the sensor learns. In case it had not been cut finely, the sensor tunes itself so that the next time it is going to cut more accurately. With time, it is going to learn. So the machine is going to learn how to cut more fine and more fine. And finally, when the machine is accurate enough, right, I no longer need the sensor to detect when that cut has to be executed. So it all becomes automated, and now it becomes a machine intelligence, right? It becomes a cyber physical system, right? Now this is convenient. This is executable only till the point that the environment is not going to change. Let's say it was for the steel strip. Now let's say the manufacturing of the steel strip is now going to change. Let's say the manufacturing process incurred a change. So the quality of that steel strip that is going to come there on that conveyor belt is now changed. It has got different properties, and maybe the cutting, the precision, the timing, or the force with which it is going to be cut may not be precise enough. So again, the machine will have to learn, and then we require the physical twin also. So this is a standard process that is followed in many industry 4.0, and it works fine till the environment does not change. Okay, so once the environment changes, that feedback control loop needs to tell it that you need to readjust your settings according to the quality of this steel strip that is coming in. Okay, so this is another technique to solve the cyber physical system. And finally, we have this multi-agent system, which is very much in vogue, right? So what is a multi-agent system? Is nothing but a collaborative, a logical component that is going to work in a distributed manner to achieve one solution. So multi-agent system means there are multiple agents. What are agents? They are nothing but logical segments of the cyber physical system that are going to be working in collaboration. If they are not suitable enough of, singularly handling that cyber physical system. So if it is not singularly realizable, it is going to be split it into sub parts for handling the data that is going to be considered. So in the case of multi-agent systems, your communication, because I've got different agents, it's a distributed system. So there are so many things that come as a aftermath, or it comes as additional to if using a distributed system, is that the first thing that we need to do is we don't have a common platform, right? So communicating a Wi-Fi agent to a Bluetooth agent becomes difficult. So now we require gateways, we'll be requiring relays, we'll be requiring proxies to carry on the same internet communication that was peacefully happening, whether when we did standardization or online data stream learning, or where we were using this digital twins and cloud computing. So multi-agent systems, though it's going to be good in handling because you're distributing the task into multiple domains, right? There are two major flaws that are going to be affecting it is that it requires communication among the multiple agents and that may not be achieved in real time. So it's not good for real time constraints. The second thing is the agents are going to have different capabilities. They are going to be computational intensive or they may be small miniature systems. So because they are going to be heterogeneous and communication infrastructure is heterogeneous, then coupling up the multi-agent system is going to be difficult. So these are the existing solutions. Now, just this is the diagrammatic representation of how we are going to handle data for and how do they affect. So we had four concerns, right? We discussed that there are four constraints of handling data for a cyber physical system. We need to handle the security, infrastructure is a problem, the real time constraint is a problem, and the quality of data is a problem. So this diagram just summarizes how it is going to impact it, right? The red arrows show the negative impact, means it is going, it's a demerit for that, and the green arrows show the positive impact. So coming to it one by one, I'll just be discussing the pros and cons of standardization. So if we have these four criteria to be met for a cyber physical system, means I need to have to meet the constraints of infrastructure and data quality. If I do standardization, what are the good things that are going to be there? Obviously, I'll have an easier processing of the data. Why? Because I just have one format. It is in an XML. So I just need one type of data. It can be structured or unstructured. Okay, but there are so many different types of formats that are available, and I may be working in HTML and I would want the infrastructure, I want some person or something in the cyberspace to be mapping that XML into HTML because my application is an HTML based application. So I'm going to maintain all the different standards that are there so that the versatility of my product is good enough. Okay. These were the standardization issue is a major issue when we move down from Nokia phones to this Windows phones to Android phones. So most of the apps that were applicable on the Windows phone did not continue to be applicable on the Android phone, and now hopefully we have rectified that problem. But 7 to 10 years back, we had this infrastructural problem because of the standardization. Now, when we come down to this standardization in terms of security, because I've got one format, it is going to be more secure. Okay, and obviously because it is one format, I'll be able to process it fast. So it is good for quality, it is good for the timeliness, and it is good for the security point of view, right? But here I'll have to maintain a large amount of different standards and I'll have to have more data to exchange. Okay. I move down to cloud computing. If cloud computing is a solution, how does it impact all these constraints? So if we talk about the cloud computing for CPS, right? The first thing is in a cloud is infinite storage, right? Infinite computation, infinite application environment. So, but configuring the cloud as an infrastructure is very tedious. So I have the effort to set it up, but it will give me better communication possibilities, right? Once I am able to set up a cloud for my CPS, then the communication is really smooth because all I have to do is collect data and put it up to the cloud, and then the cloud will handle the analytics. I don't have to worry about the analytics. Okay, so obviously if the cloud is having infinite storage, infinite computational capacity, then the results will always be in real time because I have multiple devices working on it, right? We'll be my case study will be on cloud computing, where I'll show you how a cyber physical system is going to be offloading the jobs and achieving real-time constraints. Okay, so now we come down to quality. Now, as I said, I don't know where the data is placed in the cloud, so the redundancy of the data is a major thing, and security is also compromised, because if I go in for a public cloud, it will be open for all to use, and the security is something that whose validation is difficult when we use cloud computing. I discussed about online data stream processing, right? So the pros of online data stream processing is that it gives you the results in real time. It does not require you to have infrastructure. Why? Because everything is being done online in the cyberspace, right? So you do not have to spend much on the infrastructure. The results of the cyber physical system is on time, but there are two demerits of it, is that the accuracy, because if I have to execute an algorithm for thousands of data, I'll first need to reduce the dimension of the data, and reducing the dimension of the data, the data is going to be less accurate. Okay, and because it's online, it is open to security breaches, and that's why it is less reliable. So coming down to the data processing methodology, where we discuss the cyber twin scenario, right? So in this case, I have an improved data quality, I've got an improved security and an improved infrastructure. I do not have this real-time constraint. Why? Because the real-time constraint will obviously be validated. It's got a cyber twin, right? So whatever is happening at the physical scenario is going to be happening at the cyber scenario, right? So there is no point of having a real-time constraint here. It is not applicable for real-time, because I am basing things on historical data, so that real-time constraints cannot be validated. Okay, so here, if I use the a time machine methodology to process data, I require storage. This is a very important criteria that limits the adoption of this methodology. This methodology is used typically for Industry 4.0, because they use large data centers, but still it is a demerit. It is a flaw in that this solution has this inherent flaw, is that no matter how much we estimate the storage that may be required, every passing day the requirement of storage space is going to increase. So it will never be able to satisfy if I am historically storing every data of every process. It's going to be there, right? So though it's going to be reliable, though it is going to have a very good data quality, and the infrastructure wise it is going to be convenient to use, but the only demerit is that I require a storage space. And why do I require the storage space? Because I will be storing the same replica of the physical device into that cyberspace. Okay, we come down to the multi-agent system. So how does this multi-agent system affect these constraints? So if I'm using a multi-agent system, it is going to be secure. Why? Because every sub part, every small agent is going to be secure in itself. But because it is going to be distributed, there will be problems with data exchange. What one system is using as a format, the other system may not be using it as a format. Okay, then we can have a better data quality again, because you have interoperability. Okay, but multi-agent systems do not follow the real-time constraints. So those cyber physical systems that are not made for emergency situations are typically using multi-agent systems. Okay, like a environmental monitoring scenario. These use multi-agent systems, like a robot who is going to be delivering parcels, right? So these are multi-agent systems, because you don't have a time constraint that this analysis should complete within that prescribed time. So it has got a very simple design, because it is a combination of multiple small agents, and every small agent is doing its own job. So it is robust, it is secure, it is simple, and the data quality is also maintained. But because it requires inter-process communication, and that communication is going to be done through the internet. It never is on time. Okay, so that's the limitations of, or these are the constraints of our cyber physical system and the existing solutions that we have till date of solving that. Now there is one another feature that is really important, and that is data fusion. So when we talk about of data fusion, we've got different fusion techniques, and usually what we know about fusion is the statistical estimate. Okay, so whenever we need to transfer sensor data into a decision, we can have different estimation methods. Rather than transmitting the entire stream of data, we first need to interpret what that data is. Okay, so that data may be a statistical estimation. For example, if I compute the temperature of my HVAC system of a smart home, if the temperature needs to be detected, the per second data of that room does not need to be transmitted. Okay, so it's just going to transmit data, or it's just going to actuate only when the threshold is crossed to turn on the light, or to turn on the fan, or to turn off the AC. So this is the statistical estimate. It takes the group, it takes the variance, right? What is the expected value and how much is the current value varying from it. So based on the basis of variance, on the basis of averages, we make a statistical estimation, and that estimated value is transported to the cyberspace. So instead of, if there are 1000 sensors, those 1000 sensors are going to be collecting, let's say, 1000 bits of data per second. So that 1000 bits of data are now going to be classified, right? That this is temperature data, humidity data, right? This is your intrusion detection data. Okay, so the intrusion detection data is going to be binary. The temperature data is going to be textual, or the humidity data is going to be textual. So you need to do an estimation, the statistical estimation, that only when it goes beyond the threshold, that value is going to go up to the cloud. So that is a statistical estimation. So I'm reducing that 1000 bits of information into maybe 2 or 5 bits of information. When we come down to sequential estimation is when I go on averaging at every level. Okay, so sequential estimation is sensor 1 transmits the data to sensor 2, and sensor 2 couples it together, combines both the data, adds it or averages it, and then sends it to sensor 3. Identity estimation is the third, whether it is on or off, whether there is an intruder or not. So the identity, and the weighted decision, if I have a robot which is working with multiple sensors and all the sensors information requires to be noted, I'll find the correlation among them and I'll apply weights before I'm going to decide on it, right? So the data fusion topology will be on the basis of these type of estimation techniques. We've got different data fusion technologies. Okay, so I've got a central fusion where you got a central fusion you've got a global fusion center. What is this fusion center? This is the access point, or this is the base station, and you've got different sources, so it gets fused out here. So this is going to be a statistical fusion. Okay, when we go to a hierarchical fusion, so we have in-network processing, right? So we've got multiple data sources, but because of the volume of the data, it gets processed in between, right? And they may be the differences, or as I said, it will be only transmitting the threshold value, only those values which cross the threshold for further fusion. So this is your hierarchical fusion. When we come down to serial fusion, as I said, sequential fusion, where you have a data source 1, and when it goes to the nth data source, it combines all the previous elements, right? So every sensor between the first and the final sensor is going to perform the fusion of its data with the data from the previous before it transmits it to the next data. Okay. This is the basic data fusion model that we use. This HCI stands for human computer interface, right? So here we've got 4 levels of fusion. This is, if we come down to the detail of this, the source pre-processing, whatever happens at the source, right? At the source pre-processing, it's going to take care of whether the sensor is working properly. So the calibration is going to be working here, okay? So the quantization, sampling and alignment. Then it moves down to an object refinement. It tries to classify the sensors, that these are temperature sensors, right? These are humidity sensors. So whatever they are going to be collecting is grouped into one particular context. Okay, then we come down to situation refinement, right? So if there are more number of objects that needs to be monitored, right? You have a rule-based system. For example, a situation refinement will deal with a fire alarm. So a fire alarm will require 3 types of sensors. It will require the temperature, humidity, and let's say the heat, yeah, the infrared, right? The light intensity. So it'll have a relationship that if temperature is above 45 and humidity is about a particular X amount, and the light intensity is a particular threshold, then only then we can decide that it is a situation of a fire. So that is building a relationship between the ambient environment, what is to be expected, and what has been observed. So we do a template matching, or we have rule-based expert systems, which are nothing but if, then and else rules. Then we come down to thread refinement. Threads usually come up when you require more number of agents to be working. Okay, so when you require the extrapolation of whatever you have executed on one system to be applied on other systems as well, you do a thread refinement. Okay, and finally is your process refinement, where you are actually dependent on the decision. You are tuning your sensors. Again, the sensor give you the value. You see how variable, how much precision you have achieved. If it is not satisfactory, you retune the sensors. So that is known as process refinement. So these are the fusion techniques that we typically use in cyber physical systems. We've got rough set based, we've got weighted average, Kalman filter based fusion, we've got based rule based fusion, fuzzy set theory, random theoretic, Dempner, Schaefer theory based techniques. The only thing that needs to be remembered here is what are the basis on which we choose this fusion algorithms, right? So we require dependent on the output, dependent on the accuracy, or dependent on the complexity, dependent on how much good we are at computing. So whether we are a high-end device or we are a miniature device, dependent on what is our resources, the battery power that is available, and the most important thing is the expected operational time. I don't say that all cyber physical systems are real-time dependent, okay? But whichever applications are safety critical, or whichever applications require real-time need to be following this expected operational time. Okay. This is just a brief outlay of what are the different types of mechanisms that we have. So we've got averages, weighted average method, simplest because it is just going to compute the average. An average will always be from isomorphic sensors, means they are going to be sensors of the same type, right, of the same object. So obviously, if we are able to only compute or fuse data of one type, then the performance is not going to be very good. Because if I have 3 different types of sensors, right, so the net result will be alpha A plus beta B plus gamma C. Right? This will be proportional. This will be the compression ratio at which A, B, and C sensors are going to be fused together. So this is not a very good in terms of performance, but and it is used for Internet of Things. Okay. Then we come down to the Kalman filter. Kalman filter is the most used type of data fusion because it does it at the signal level. At the very circuit level, Kalman filter is going to fuse the data. And instead of taking that average value, it is going to be working with the variance estimate. It is going to vary, right? How much we are going to vary. Okay. So when we come down to the Kalman filter situation, what are the applications that we have? We've got a target tracking and we've got a whenever we deal with linear type of objects, we go in with the Kalman filter. Okay. When our data is non-linear in nature, then we go to this EKF, that is the enhanced Kalman filter, which deals with the estimates of whatever has been derived, and in segments it is applied to that data stream. So even that non-linear data is first mapped into that linear segments, and then the Kalman filter approach is applied to it. Okay. Now this Kalman filter is very good. Why? And very frequently used. Why? Because it happens at the device level itself, but it is not good in case we go in for a large scale data fusion, because whatever approach, the way that we have to calculate the variance of every data element, and if it comprises of a very large cyber physical system, then Kalman filter is really not. So then what do we do? So we have other fusion techniques. Another is a Bayes rule based fusion technique, right? So in the Bayes rule, we use the Bayes probability, where whatever is the posterior probability is going to be dependent on the prior probability. But so what is the issue here? The issue is that the prior probability needs to be fixed, which is very difficult to estimate. If the prior probability is not consistent, because I said that the environment is going to change, the requirement is going to change, the system itself is not going to be remaining stable. So whatever we had prior estimated, the probability that was correct at t minus 1th time may not be correct at the t I plus 1th time. Okay, so when do we use Bayes rule? Is when I do not have complete data. When I have to extrapolate data, I use Bayes rule fusion, because based on the prior probability, I can more or less decide what would be the next probable instance, or what would be the next probable data that would be appearing. So this is the Bayes rule based fusion. Now, because we are talking of probability here, and we are talking of, we may be talking of linguistic variables. So whenever we don't have a distinctive criteria, we go in with a fuzzy set theory based fusion. So what happens with fuzzy? We use that fuzzy model of classification of imprecise or non-crisp values, right? So whenever we cannot estimate the accuracy, we cannot accurately decide whether it can be classified into A or B, we use this fuzzy theory based fusion, where it models that particular fusion, or it fuses the data on the basis of classes. Okay, what is the demerit? The demerit is how to decide for the classes. We are talking of data from sensors, right? So the membership function, the decision about the membership function is very, very difficult to be derived. So you need an expert opinion about that. If that classification is not accurate, then fuzzy set theory based fusion does not give you good performance. Then moving on further, we've got a rough set based fusion and the Dempster-Shafer theory. Okay, with rough sets, because we are talking about data, and the data may be belonging to a particular class, or it may be an outlier to a particular class. Rather than classifying it, another way of doing it is by clustering it. So the similar type of data are going to be clustered and merged into one class, used as another class, and whichever does not belong to that cluster is treated as an outlier and may not be included in that fusion, right? So that is rough set based fusion. right? When we come down to Dempster-Shafer theory, in this theory, here we are taking clustered instances. So the clustered instances is the point estimates of the data, isn't it? Now instead of that point estimate, if I have to go for an interval based estimation, like what was the value of the sensor in that 10-second interval, I cannot go in for this point based estimation, and then I will have to go in for this Dempster-Shafer theory, right? So this DS theory is just going to estimate what is the level of uncertainty in a particular interval for that particular data, and it is going to be fused according to that uncertain data, right? So whenever your data is uncertain, it may be X at one point of time and it may be Y at another point of time. You need to consider its value for an interval of time, and for fusing data for one interval of time, right, rather than point based estimation, we go in for a DS theory. Okay, there are many research articles available on the details of it. Because the time is very short, I'm just going through the basics of it. So the last one that I'll be discussing with you is the random set theory, which is the combination of fuzzy as well as the DS theory, okay, as well as the rough set. So basically in this random set you have a random vector, okay, and what is that random vector? It is nothing but the variable of that vector according to the sensor. The value of the sensor is represented as a random vector, okay, and dependent on that uncertainty criteria, it contains a range of values that it can take, right? And that range of values are going to belong to some particular class which is not crisp in nature, so it will be represented as linguistic variables, okay, and then that uncertain information is going to belong to a fuzzy class. So that is the basis of using a random set theory, okay. So random values or random variables that belong to the data measured by sensors are put to a set, and that set is a fuzzy set, right? And then we estimate the probability of that sensor value belonging to that fuzzy random set, okay. So when we have heterogeneous data, whenever we have heterogeneous data, the random set theoretic fusion, it becomes important. Why? Because I cannot go in for averaging, I cannot go in for a Kalman filter, right? Because we've got heterogeneous, we've got different formats of data. So I need to first classify the different formats, right? And those classes may not be crisp with their boundaries, they may be overlapping boundaries. So for that I consider fuzziness, okay, and I assign random variables to that, for which I can now classify my sensor value to belong to a set, and that set is the clustered, or that set is the combined fused value, which will then be transmitted. I hope this is clear. So with this, I complete the third segment of my topic, and now let's come down to this case study. I hope I have time. Okay. So this is more of research that was done in order to reduce the latency requirement. So when we talk about IoT devices and cyber-physical devices, IoT is just a subdomain of the cyber-physical device. We've got so many ML algorithms that can be applied. But when we come down to IoT, when we come down to devices which are generating data, they are usually miniature devices and they are not very computationally sound. So the resource limitation is at the device level, and for that, whatever we collect, we post it to the cloud. So a very standard solution for implementing IoT is to collect sensor data and to upload it to the cloud. Now that cloud, if I need a switch to be turned on, if I want a motor to be turned on dependent on the humidity value of soil, or dependent on the temperature or the ambient light intensity of my room, and if that actuation, if that decision needs to come down from the cloud, right, there'll be a very large amount of latency. So that small amount of data will first be posted to the cloud. The cloud is going to compute that, okay, if the temperature or if the humidity is below this value, below 45, then turn on the motor, else it do nothing. Or if the ambient light intensity is less than these many lux, then turn on the light, else do nothing. So this logic can run at 3 places. So that is the essence of our research. So we've got the cloud, and here we've got the different heterogeneous devices that are communicating to each other. Now this is the edge cloud, or this is the server that sits at the edge of the network. Now this is not a part of the cloud. The cloud may be somewhere here. Edge is a buffer in between the device that is transmitting and the actual cloud, which has the infinite resources. The difference between the edge and the cloud is that the edge does not have infinite resources. The cloud has infinite resources. Okay. Now, down to the edge based, right? So if this is the base station that is transmitting data collected from these many smart devices, right, and all of them are heterogeneous in nature, right, I need to do a little bit of in-network processing before this, right? So what do we do? Rather than fusing data, we are not talking of fusing, we are transmitting these data because they are absolutely heterogeneous in nature and we assume that it cannot be fused. So if all of these are communicating, I'll have X amount of data that is being populated per second. Okay. Now, whatever needs to be done, right, it has to be done in real-time constraints. Okay. So if each of this data is streamlined to be transported to the cloud may be busy, or the distance from physically also, if the distance from this base station to the cloud is very, very far, right, the processing is going to incur a time delay. So instead of processing it here and transferring it to the base station, what does this cloud do? This cloud allocates helper devices at the edge of the network. Okay, so what is the essence, what is the problem that we've taken up is we want to reduce the latency, right? And because I don't want to go in for cloud, right? Because I cannot go in for cloud, I don't want to incur the payment that I need to do for the cloud, right? So if I am able to reduce the latency, if I am able to reduce the cost that I'm incurring for computation, right, as well as I am able to reduce the load on the network, right, on the edges, right, then how at all are we going to achieve it? So we've proposed a strategy for achieving this by a game theoretic based approach, right? So what do? We leverage machine learning, and game backward induction is a game theoretic approach which works on backward induction. It goes from the last point of that option and then it traces back of the available options and optimizes it. Okay. Then we consider, our approach is going to consider the communication strength between the target device and the helper device. What is the target device? The target device are these which are waiting for the decision to be executed. Okay. The helper devices will be somewhere placed in this edge that is going to take the workload of the cloud. So the cloud is going to give its task to the helper devices, and the helper devices are going to execute it for the cloud and transmit it to the target devices. Now we will be reducing the latency. How? Because this edge cloud is closer, it is nearer to the network, right? So the time delay that is going to be incurred is going to obviously, right? And for that we use machine learning tools, the data analytics tools, okay? And we need to estimate the capacity of the helper devices. These are the information or the data that we need to collect before approaching. This is the proposed model. We first need to estimate the CPU utilization. So this is my region of interest. If this is my region of interest and there are so many servers edge devices, right, that are sitting near the edge of my network, and there is some cloud. So this helper devices are talking to the cloud model, right? Now this cloud maintains the CPU utilization of these devices, okay? And this region of interest has so many devices which are the target environment, which are waiting for the decision, right? So it goes, this CPU utilization is stored in a library here, okay? And the cloud now estimates which is the ideal candidate among this 1, 2 or 3, whether the job needs to go to 3 or it needs to go to 2 or it needs to go to 1, on the basis of minimum delay, on the basis of load balancing, and on the basis of the low cost. Okay, so we've considered 3 criteria on the basis of we are going to choose. Okay, so the first model takes the time series analysis of all the CPU utilization, okay, and it computes, it develops a machine learning model, and it computes what is the utilization of the device at a particular date and time. So this is the prediction of the result of the machine learning algorithm. This black line is the data that is getting collected. If you can see, this black line is the data, the actual data that is collected by the sensors. This dark blue line is our algorithmic prediction. Okay, this is what is being predicted by our machine learning model, and this dashed line, this blue shaded portion, is the degree of uncertainty that is there in our model. Okay, so how much data have we collected? We have collected data till here. Okay, this is the date till which we collected the data, and on the basis of the pattern of the data, now we can recompute or extrapolate what is the variation or what will be the CPU utilization in the other dates also. Okay, so once we are having what is the expected CPU occupancy of helper devices, when we know what is the strength of communication, whether it can have mobile communication or it is capable of a Wi-Fi communication, right? So we establish the strength of communication and the processing power of the helper device, means it should be computational intensive. The type of the job, can it be executed on that helper device? We need to estimate it and we put it to the second machine learning model, right? And then we estimate the CPU utilization. So for that, we do, as I said, we go for backward induction. We do a topological sorting. So here what we can see is this 3 and 4 are 2 helper devices which are at the same level, right? So we need to devise how this task needs to be sequentialized. So the topological sorting places, dependent on the quality of node 3, it is topologically ordered to come nearer to 2, right? Okay, so whatever task is allocated to 2 is first going to go to 3, and if 3 is busy, then it will be transferred to 4, right? Here 2 could have sent it either to 3 or to 4, but here on the basis of this model, it is going to estimate which one is the better candidate, right? And it is going to either transfer it to 3 or it is going to go to 4. On that basis, once the topological sorting is done, we see the deadline time of every task. If the deadline time is met, then this is our solution. Otherwise, we again perform the topological sorting, and that topological sorting is going to be done in a backward induction manner. So these are the results that we achieved. We see that if we followed a general cloud or edge uploading time for a job, we had a completion time. You can see the variation. This is the percentage of offloading. These are the jobs that have been offloaded to the cloud and the edge devices, right? So if through our scenario, what do we see is that the number of devices that we could offload to. So when a normal edge or a cloud computing achieves distributing the job to 40%, we achieve distribution of the job to 80%, right? So we achieve a uniform most of the 80% utilization of the helper devices, and we reduce the total completion time by 6 seconds. Now this 2 seconds is very, very critical, because when we talk about of cyber physical time delay, it is usually in the order of microseconds. So having achieved 2 second grace time for completion of a job is the result of our strategy that we followed. And this result show us that we are using the optimum, means all the devices are optimally selected. They are going to be selected with the equal amount of workload. It's not that one of the devices is going to be overloaded, one of the cloud resources is not going to be overloaded. So this gives us the percentage of offloading, and it gives me the amount of completion time. The more the amount of offloading, the lesser the completion time that we achieve. So this is in the order of seconds. So if I am able to offload it to 80, the same job takes only 2 seconds, right? So this is something that is achieved for a cyber physical system for handling data, how data needs to be transferred, how it needs to be distributed. Okay, so these are the conclusions for that. And this features of our strategy that we followed for handling the bulk of data for cyber physical system. So these are the references, and that's it. I would be able to take questions now.
Participants, please, if you have any question, please raise. Okay, we can then conclude.
Okay, then thank you everyone. Okay. I hope whatever I wanted to deliver has, so maybe it did not click, so that's why there are no questions. Anyways, it was a good opportunity. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Thank you for joining us and sharing your expertise with the participants. I hope the participant will be benefited with this field of engineering. Thank you. Thank you for joining. And kindly share the PPTs with the participants. Please send it to me. Thank you.